Let's talk some more Karen Read, shall we? My name's Katherine Loftus. This is Note My Objection. Let's get into it. So for as much time away as I have taken from the Karen Read case, and I do that because for my own mental health and well-being, it's a conversation I really want to get into at some point. Probably right now is not the time, but I think it's a fascinating sort of reflection. The Karen Read cases of the society we live in today. This like sort of black and white, left, right, good versus evil, that kind of thing. Because there is nothing like Karen Read coverage that brings me the hate. And it's really interesting that having an opinion that does not align with the mainstream perspective, it makes people think that warrants sort of, attacks and hatred and all that kind of stuff. So I have to tell you that, we chilled out after the first trial, we chilled out after the second trial, but I do actually think in some ways the civil case is almost more interesting to me. And while I don't do wrongful death work, I don't do civil rights work, I do a lot of civil practice in both Superior Court of Massachusetts as well as federal court. That's the practice I in with my father, which he's been doing for 35 years, and so I know a fair amount about how sort of the civil practice works, and it's really been interesting for me to sort of watch, and I just can't help it. I have to dive in and give you guys my opinion. Like I can't stop talking for too long. So let's get back into it and sort of what's going on. I did an update, sort of a debrief that got us up to last week. I think it was Tuesday, November 25th. And on Tuesday, November 25th, we saw a notice of removal filed in federal court. And that's the defendants, the civilian defendants attorneys. That's Brian and Nicole Albert, Jennifer and Matt McCabe, as well as Brian Higgins. Now, this is the Bristol complaint. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to the 3 videos ago, where it says Karen Read civil debrief, and it sort of explained. But this is the Bristol complaint, not the wrongful death complaint that the O'Keeffes have filed against Karen Read in the Bars, Waterfall, and C.F. McCarthy's. This is her lawsuit against Michael Proctor, Brian Tully, the Buchanan, eventually will include the state police as well as the town of Canton, I believe, and the civilian witnesses I just named. Now, the notice of removal was filed basically in lieu of an answer. So what happens in civil court is you file a complaint, stamp it, and then you serve all the defendants. You have 90 days from the issuance, from the date of the complaint and the issuance of the summonses to serve defendants. So preferably we want in-hand service. That means like literally physically giving that to someone. You have a process server do that, or the constable, or the sheriff's department. And once you are served with a complaint, you have to file a responsive pleading, an answer generally, or a motion to dismiss within 20 days of service of the complaint and summons. So once you get handed a complaint and summons, you have to hire a lawyer or on your own file an answer within 20 days. Now, in state court, often doesn't happen within 20 days. Sometimes the attorneys are working out extensions. Sometimes they settle in the interim. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on. But you are technically obligated in lieu of filing an answer in Bristol County Superior Court, which is state court in Massachusetts. Attorney Tuxbury, I think it's James Tuxbury. I think it's James. I apologize if I got it wrong. Of Hinckley Allen and who represents the civilians, the Alberts, McCabe's, and Higgins, filed a notice of removal to federal court. And the basis for why he did that is because the meat of Karen Read's complaint is relative to 1983 claims. And what 1983 claims is 42 U.S.C. 1983 in federal court. And basically what that's a statute that allows individuals to sue the government, state, local municipalities, government employees acting in their capacity for violating their constitutional rights. Now, I read the complaint originally, but I feel like I just sort of perused it, and I went through it a little bit more substantially. And I do have to say, like, it's fascinating, for someone. it's fascinating some of the stuff that they put in the complaint. Like, for example, one of the basis for the civil rights complaint is that she was arrested without probable cause, and that she was charged without probable cause, and that all this stuff about probable cause. And like, my first question as a criminal lawyer is like, well, without probable cause, no one filed a motion to suppress. Like, what are you talking about? Like, if there was actually no probable cause, you would get your case dismissed because the evidence would be gone, right? Like, in criminal court, if there is an alleged violation of your constitutional rights, you file a motion to suppress because it's called the fruit of the poisonous tree, okay? If the stop's bad, the 6 kilos of coke are bad, they're out, okay? If, A, B, and C were done wrong, everything's out. And oftentimes, that gets your case basically completely kicked. So if we're saying that there was no probable cause to do A, B, C, and D, and therefore Karen Reed's civil rights were violated, I'm like, but nobody filed a motion to suppress. So it's a little, I don't know, it's like, it feels a little disingenuous to me because it's like, well, if that were really the case, no attorney would be like, well, I'm just going to waive it, even though there's no probable cause for her to get arrested or charged. You know what I mean? It's like, but nonetheless, the complaints all resound in federal law, okay, primarily. And it doesn't mean that you can't litigate a civil rights claim in state court, but generally they're litigated in federal court. So what you can do as a defendant, if you believe that the case should be, and you have a right to be heard in federal court, you file a notice of removal. Okay, so that has to happen within 30 days of receipt of the complaint, and then, or the filing of the complaint. 30 days I think it's 30 days within the filing of the complaint. I'm spacing out there on that one, but I'll check. It's either 30 days on the date stamp of the complaint or upon service. It's probably upon service, because if you don't know before then, how are you going to know when the 30 days runs? So you have to file a notice of removal. All the defendants have to consent. There has to be, basically, you have to have a basis to be in federal court. So you either have to have one of a number of items or a federal question. We're just going to go right to the federal question, because for this instance and this explanation, it's a federal question, okay? The statute is a federal question about whether someone's federal constitutional rights have been violated. So notice of removal gets filed. If Karen Reed wants to she can try to remand it back to state court. I think it's probably unlikely, because you either have to have, basically the argument has to be that that the federal court does not have subject matter jurisdiction, which they do because it's a 1983 complaint, or that there was a procedural defect in the removal. And I don't think, based on what I've seen, and this attorney, actually, I don't know him personally, and I've never actually heard of him, probably because he does complex commercial litigation, and that's really complicated stuff. But he just recently won a $35 million verdict. So this is an attorney who knows what he's doing, okay? This is, on both sides. All of these attorneys know what they're doing. So he files a notice of removal. Potentially we could see from the Reed side to remand to state court, because they definitely didn't want, my understanding was they did not want this in federal court at all. And I can understand why they don't want it in federal court, because like we have talked about many times, whether you like it or not, the cameras and the media and the PR and all of you watching are a part of the Reed litigation strategy. It has been from the very beginning, and it has been extremely, extremely effective. And so, of course, they want to stay out of federal court, because they don't get to make the argument to the public, and then it gets spread everywhere. Now you have to rely on someone like me, who's going to be in federal court because because I'm an attorney and I'm allowed to be there. So I'll be down there taking notes and reporting back to you guys. But it's a different kind of case now, right? It's, if you have to litigate it in federal court and not state court, where literally nothing is, you don't hear anything except from the people who come out and tell you what happened. It's a very different kind of, it doesn't connect quite with the world we're in now, right? Where everyone's I see it, I'm watching. Everyone's watching the trial. It's on Court TV. It's on Law and Crime. It's on CBS. It's everywhere, right? If you don't have that, it changes the way you present the case, because if part of your defense is presenting the case to the public in a certain way that hopefully sort of, has an impact on the overall case, If suddenly that's taken away, then you have to sort of regroup. So the only question I really had relative to the removal and potential remand is because they do say that they are going to be suing. So the first three counts are federal questions. Then we have, or maybe it's count 4 too. No, count 4 is Massachusetts civil rights. Then they have malicious prosecution, intentional infliction of emotional distress, civil conspiracy. So those are what we would call, so those are state charges, those are state counts. We have federal claims and state claims. Now, we generally want to hear everything together, okay? In terms of like promotion of, we hear about it a lot, judicial economy. Like, does it make sense to litigate these separately? No, because it's the same thing. So why are we going to have one in state, one in federal? So what that means is if federal court has jurisdiction due to the 1983 claim, so they have a federal question they can latch onto, all the other state claims, they can take supplemental jurisdiction over. So then the federal court can hear all of them. The only caveat I could see coming up is that the complaint says in a footnote that they're going to be filing they'll be adding the state police as a defendant, but they have not finished their presentment time yet. So in Massachusetts, we have what's called the Massachusetts Tort Claims Act. What that means is that if you're going to sue a municipality, a government agency, anyone, you have to submit what's called a presentment to the executive officer or whoever is designated for that officer. Basically, you have to file a presentment claim, saying this is who I'm claiming it against, this is what I'm claiming it for, and you have a right to a response from them. If they deny it, then you get to sue. So at the end of the 6 months, if there's no formal denial, that's considered effectively a denial, and then you get to sue. But you cannot name them in a lawsuit until the 6 months is up if they don't deny it beforehand. Okay, so the 6 months has to expire. In the Massachusetts Tort Claims Act, the Massachusetts Civil Rights Act, those can only be litigated in state court in Massachusetts. So that's the only thing that the plaintiff, in this case, Karen Reed, could potentially make to the court that, hey, we have this claim coming in, and it's going to make it only, a state court claim, and we don't want to separate them. So in promotion of judicial economy, we should actually be in state court. I think that's unlikely to be successful on that argument, but I do think it's an argument that they likely will make. So it'll be interesting to see if they actually file a formal remand or if they'll just stay in federal court. But I do think that overall, it's going to be interesting. Like, I really feel like this is going to be sort of we might get more of an understanding of like what actually was going on, because I do think there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to the Reed case. And I think that a lot of people are not honest on both sides about like the different factors. You know what I mean? Like on like the pro-Karen, I hate the pro-Karen Reed, anti-Karen Reed. Someone said to me today, I know you think she's guilty and you're anti-Karen Reed. What are you talking about? I'm an attorney. I've followed this for 3 years. I have read every single thing. I've watched every single thing, like in and out. I feel like it's embedded in my brain. And I think she's guilty, okay? Big deal. That doesn't make me anti-someone. I represent people who are guilty. That doesn't make me anti-you, okay? So we have to acknowledge that, like, all of this has been floating around, and in the civil case, like, it's going to come in play. You know what I mean? So we're almost trying, it's like we have the wrongful death case in Plymouth, but then we have this is like a whole can of worms, and I'm just like too fascinated to stay out of it. So here I am. Basically what I'm going to be doing is just like breaking things down as much as I can. The law is really complicated. I think personally, I feel like, there's a reason why I don't cover, no shame to anybody, because people just, doing their jobs or whatever they want to do. But I generally don't cover cases anymore that are not in my jurisdiction, because I feel like after I covered the Karen Reed case so in depth, now I understand that I'm like, oh, when I would come in and talk about a case in, so it's Virginia or whatever, it's like, I really don't know what I'm talking about. So I prefer to pay attention. I look for like the people on the ground for the most part, who are covering cases. And I think I offer that. I think I offer that perspective for people to see, like, hey, listen, this is how it works in Massachusetts. This is the normal practice. These are the local procedures, and this is how it goes. So I think that the Reed McCabe Alberts case is going to be really interesting. And I do think, I wonder. Because I'm like, okay, so I'm sure they'll file some sort of motions to dismiss. I mean, it's been the position of the McCabe's, the Alberts, and Higgins since this came out, and we saw the letter from Tuxbury to Reed's team. Because if remember, in the last video, we talked about how the Reed's team filed a motion to add all these people as defendants to the wrongful death. And basically, Tuxbury wrote back and was like, no. Like, first of all, none of this is, like, legit. This is all ridiculous. And, you're not going to do it that way. And it's going to be dismissed and yada, yada, yada. And so what they did was they filed in Bristol instead. And now he's removing. So for me, it's actually really fascinating from, like, a legal perspective. I know sometimes people get annoyed with me because I'm like, this is like, it's like, it's like theater. It's a show, and it's about who can outmaneuver and who can outthink and who can outstep. It's like who's playing checkers and who's playing chess. And I feel like now we have a lot of interesting new players, and some of them are playing chess and some of them are playing checkers, but sometimes it appears one's one way and one's the other. And so I just cannot resist. I love the law too much not to dive in. So I'll keep you posted. Anytime if there's anything in federal court, make sure you come check with me because I'm going to go to them in person. Right now it's assigned to Judge Denise Casper. Denise Casper is the chief judge of the federal court in Boston. That's down at the Joe Moakley Courthouse in the Seaport. And she also is the judge who signed all of the protective orders for the federal grand jury released to the DA's office. So kind of interested. I'm like, is there a conflict there? Is there not a conflict there? I don't know how that'll go. But I remember the first time I met her way back in the day, and I told her about how I was a DA, and I just got into practice with my dad, and and she said, oh, those DAs, those are the best. They're the ones, they're not afraid. They'll just grab a file and try it. So that's it. I'll keep you posted on anything that comes up. I think she's on December 5th, next Friday, I think it's in Plymouth. So stay tuned. I'll have all your updates.
If you like this episode, please comment, like, share, and subscribe. Every bit helps. Thanks for watching Note My Objection. See you next week.